All right, I'd like to move now away from project files and administrative records, and I want to go to Spokane and hear from Chris. He's been awfully quiet. So Chris, can you talk about contract modifications a little bit?
Sure, Kathy. So we are in a situation where we have to have a contract modification. And just a couple of quick notes. Obviously, that's required when there's a change to the statement of work. We need to make a change. There are a few things we need to consider. We need to make sure that that modification has a cost estimate. We need to make sure that we have sufficient detail, and we need to make sure that we have an explanation and a signed and funded purchase request that corresponds to that government cost estimate. And then finally, we need to make sure that, just some of the nuts and bolts, we provide the contracting officer enough time to get together the estimate from the contractor and to take care of their part of the process. Just a few of the highlights. In a lot of the cases, a lot of work can be done before going to the contracting officer. As a core, one of the things that I do is when I reach a point in the project where it's evident that a contract modification is needed, I'll try to think of what exactly do we need and where are we and how do we need to get there. I definitely don't want to do this twice, and I don't think the contracting officer does either. So maybe a little planning up front seems to really help save big headaches down the road. As a core, I really want to make that contracting officer's job as easy as possible and have them do the least amount of work that they can and try to do as much upfront work as I can. So what can I do? Well, talk with the ID team, management, and the contractor. This may sound similar to what we talked about in the first and second broadcast and what Molly went over. Similar to the original statement of work development process that Molly went through in a lot of detail, we need to engage the ID team, and we really need to talk to the relevant specialists and design a framework to meet the government's needs. We need to decide how much of the new workload we can do in-house and how much needs to be contracted out. Then develop that cost estimate for that workload. The biggest difference between this and the original RFP is that now we have a contractor on board, and this gives us some advantages. We've had some experience and some time working with that contractor. We probably have a good handle on how the BLM and the contractor are working together to execute this particular contract. And we also have the contractor's input into what needs to change for a modification. So remember, while the Corps cannot obligate the government in any way, the Corps can still engage in those discussions with the contractor about what's going to take to get the project where it needs to go. Remember, we've hired this contractor based partially on their demonstrated past performance, so they likely have some good experience that would help us structure our needed modification. It can definitely be useful to have that contractor's input, but we need to remember this is still inherently a government function, and we definitely don't want the contractor involved in deciding or developing the final statement of work or anything remotely connected with the government cost estimate. That needs to be absolutely our own. We need to maintain that separation. That's our internal product. In the past, I've had contractors that will provide what I call a rough order of magnitude or kind of a ballpark guess as far as what a certain action might require in labor and time and level of effort, not necessarily in dollars. Remember, only the contracting officer can request a formal estimate from a contractor for a modification. So as a core, I can't ask them for an estimate. But if I have the contractor's labor rates from the original technical proposal and get an idea of what they think it might take in terms of hours, I could probably get a pretty good guess of what an estimate might be. So remember, a lot also depends on the contractor. Some of them may be more than willing to give you this kind of rough order of magnitude. Some of them may only respond to the contracting officer directly, and some may be willing to have kind of a verbal dialogue, but might be a little hesitant to put anything in writing. This really depends on the relationship and kind of the level of authority that contracting project manager has, or the contractor's project manager, rather. So in summary, we need to be clear about what our needs are. Don't let the contractor's views on a needed modification drive us to do what we think. We need to develop that on our own. We need to engage the contractor and keep that arm's length distance while we do so between us and them for the details, especially when it relates to cost. And remember, only the contracting officer is able to request a quote or obligate the government in any way. So using some of these tools to prepare the statement of work can help to minimize the contracting officer's workload and time and give him or her a clean, well-prepared statement of work that'll get through the process very quickly.
Thanks, Chris. I'd like to highlight a couple of the points that you said. So whenever there is a change to the statement of work, we need to do a modification, and modifications are the same as with the original statement of work. We need to figure out what we want and be able to clearly explain it. It may or may not require extra money. I've worked on lots of modifications that don't require extra money increase. And then the cores can talk to the contractor to help narrow down the specifics of what's needed, but they can't make any promises on money. And then the other point you said, the government internal cost estimate is an internal government product. The government cost estimate is an internal government product.